I think it's time for us to get started. Can I just do a real quick sound check? Would someone please put a note in the Q&A if they can hear us online? I think we're going to move forward. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Ashley Simpson-Baird. I lead a group called Merit Research Policy and Evaluation, and through that work with 5 amazing adult public charter schools in Washington, D.C., which you'll be hearing about a little bit more today. Before we meet our panelists, I would like to advance the slides. All right, so I just want to set a little context for us. As adult educators or folks who work in this space, I'm sure you already know the adult literacy challenge in this country is not separate from our workforce challenges. It's one of the root causes of them. We're in a moment where the skills required to participate in the economy are rising quickly, driven by AI, automation, and digital transformation. At the same time, millions of adults are navigating education systems that were never designed for their realities, while simultaneously trying to balance work, families, and learning. And now we're also at a policy inflection point. At the federal level, as we're seeing with the FY27 skinny budget, we're seeing proposals that could potentially eliminate all federal funding for adult education and fold it into broader workforce systems. Whether or not those changes move forward, they raise a fundamental question. If adult education is going to remain a meaningful part of our economic talent infrastructure, how should it actually be structured? And what kinds of systems are durable enough to meet this moment? Today we're going to explore the adult public charter school model and what they make possible from a policy, practice, and learner perspective. So I'm going to allow our panelists each to introduce themselves by saying their name, what organization they're from, and a little bit about their organization.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lysesta Johnson. I'm the CEO of Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. And we are your classic adult education program, offering 2 pathways to a high school diploma, the GED and the National External Diploma Program. And we also offer career and workforce training, healthcare pathway, IT pathway, and soon we will be offering a property management pathway.
Good morning. I am Michelle Walker Davis, and I am the Executive Director of the DC Public Charter School Board. And DC PCSB is the sole charter authorizer in Washington, D.C. We authorize, monitor, oversee all of the charter schools in D.C., including our adult-serving public charter schools, and we essentially set all the rules and regulations associated with charter school oversight. I'm very excited to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Betty Salado. I work at Berea Public Charter School as one of the student services supervisors and a student leadership coordinator.
Thanks for those wonderful introductions. And I want to know a little bit more about who is in the room with us today. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and you're going to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle. The first is to assess your familiarity with adult public charter schools. So thumbs up if you know what they are, thumbs down if you're not sure, or thumbs in the middle if you're kind of learning about it with us. Okay, so a really great mix. Okay, so keep your hands up, and then I want to know, what do you know about your state? Does your state, yes, allow adult public charter schools? No, they don't, or you're still figuring it out? Okay, awesome. Well, all of you are in the right space. You're here to learn, and I hope that you walk away from this presentation with more information on each of those questions. So let's start by getting really clear on what we mean when we say adult charter school. Lysesta, let's start with you. What is an adult charter school, and how is it different from a traditional adult education program?
So an adult charter school is an adult serving school that receives public funding. And like your K-12 charter schools, they are, it's locally funded generally. So we get per pupil funding like the K-12 schools, but we are serving adults at Academy of Hope in particular, 18 and older. And we operate independently We are 501c3s, of course, but you'll hear from Dr. Walker Davis about the oversight and accountability components of that, but we are independent public charter schools funded with local per pupil dollars, serving adults.
I'll share a little bit about our sort of legislative context and also the context of charter schools in the District of Columbia and in particular our adult serving schools. So our adult public charter schools operate under the same statutory authority that our other public charter schools operate under, and in DC that's called the DC School Reform Act. And this allows our board to approve schools that demonstrate need, demand, and a strong model, and in the case of adult serving schools, explicitly adult learners. The district recognized that even though we had a robust K-12 system, that system alone does not meet the needs of all of the learners in our city. And in our context, adult charter schools were a deliberate policy decision to close that gap. And in terms of who they serve, you see some of the numbers. 5,000 plus students are navigating our adult public charter schools, and I will say that that is anyone 16 and above essentially are navigating the 10 adult serving schools that we have, and they are operating across 16 campuses in the District of Columbia. Obviously, they are structured differently than our K-12 schools. There's a lot more flexibility. There's tailored programming. Leicester talked a little bit about both the high school diploma generating programs, but also the credentialing programs. And we'll talk more about what I see as such a valuable contribution to our workforce efforts in the district. And an important factor that people may not realize is that our adult serving schools are held to performance expectations, just like our K-12 schools. They are responsible for meeting their goals. They are responsible for reporting out a whole host of things, which we can talk a little bit more about later. And the last thing that I will say is that we have adult serving schools that support our entire city across the geographic area of our city. Our schools are open enrollment, which means anywhere you live in the District of Columbia, you can attend a charter school, and that remains true for our adult serving schools, although you will see that some schools serve particular neighborhoods more than others, just given where they're located. So I'll stop there and we'll share some more.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hester and Dr. Walker Davis. So just to summarize real quickly, what we're seeing here is adult charter schools are not just programs. They are public schools in DC with authorization, governance, and accountability structures that are designed specifically for adult learners. So now, thought I fixed the clicker. Guess I didn't. Now we're going to see more specifically what 2 of those 10 schools look like. So, Leicester, first, can you tell us about Academy of Hope's model, the impact you're seeing in learners' lives in terms of scale, outcomes, and pathways?
So, Academy of Hope, as I mentioned, is similar to your classic adult ed program. We do offer 2 pathways to a high school credential, and that's through the GED and the National External Diploma Program. And I think some of you may know it's a competency-based, 70 competencies, mastering those competencies. In addition to that, we have career pathways, healthcare, certified nurse assistant, phlebotomy, medical records review, and we're continuously adding to that. And then our IT pathway focused on A+, Security+, we're doing some AI work that will be coming on board, AI literacy, some AI entry-level certifications, and those are all happening under that roof. We serve the full continuum of learners. So learners who are coming in can start at the very beginning literacy levels, and this is really speaks to the ability to blend funds in DC with the local per pupil, and we also receive WIO and Title II funds. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we blend those dollars. But we were able to work with the beginning literacy learners, phonics-based, science-based, reading instruction, and literacy instruction. all the way up to individuals coming in with a high school credential who are looking to upskill and reskill. The interesting thing about that is that individuals coming in with a high school diploma, that's only 20% of the learners that we serve, they're also coming in at some of the lower basic skill levels. So on average, adults are entering our program at a 6th grade or below. Literacy, reading level, and numeracy skills are much lower than that. And you can talk to some of our math teachers in here who can tell you a little bit more about the work that we're doing around numeracy. And then the career pathways. We also have articulation agreements with local community colleges. We just became a club testing center, so test for credit. We're really excited. And I will say, I don't know if the folks from Michigan are in here, that was a direct result of a conversation with a presentation back in Nashville that we moved closer to being able to offer college credits. And our goal is for adult learners, you know, even with the IET models, is to be efficient with adults' time. While you're with us, you get your high school diploma, you can co-enroll in our career academy, you can pick up to 16 college credits with us through articulation agreements with local community college. And now you can sit for the CLEP exam and pick up additional. My goal is that we are eliminating the first year of college for individuals who are enrolled in our program. So being efficient with that. Student support services, all the things you know that are best practices. And then we launched maybe 2 years ago a graduate transition program. We all know in the space, adults leave our programs and they sort of flounder. They're really motivated that first year, but what we learned from our graduates is that they needed additional support. So we have all of that, and so how are we doing? On average, when we look at individuals who are leaving our programs with a high school diploma alone, they're picking up about $5 an hour more. We know that we need additional training to get the higher wages. When we look at our workforce learners, they are making now up to $27 an hour. We just had a wonderful apprenticeship program with Accenture. 21 graduates of our IT program entered that program. 17 of them were offered employment full-time, $70,000 plus benefits and signing bonuses. So we are really excited about that and growing. So we are, and just to give you an example of what that means, and then cut me off. This is not your highest level learner. This is not someone who stepped in, who had these ICT skills. We are building those skills through progressive programming. So we have a former dog crew who is in the program, never touched a computer. A homemaker, a woman 40 plus, that's not all, because I'm way over that. But, you know, it's changing lives, it's transformative, and it is really about looking at individuals that we typically say can't make it into these spaces and creating pathways for them to move into those spaces. And it's a longer road. It's not your 12-week program. And I think that the charter structure enables us to sort of build the program the way that we need to build it to make it more inclusive for all learners, even learners who are coming in at the beginning literacy levels, and we see them move. And we are able to leverage those local dollars to make that change.
Thank you for those great examples. So Academy of Hope is one of those 10 adult public charter schools in DC. 3 have public charter schools and others. So I'm going to bring Gabby in here to ask her to tell us a little bit more about Bria's model, her experience as a student, and what difference this school has made for her and her family.
So the public charter school is a 2-generation school, which means that parents and their children get to learn together. So a lot of the times, one of the biggest barriers is childcare. I can't afford to pay for childcare, so that education that takes like a backseat. But Bria, at least my totally biased opinion, is an amazing program because, it offers English classes, digital literacy, high school diploma, and workforce medical assistant program, CBA. And for the children's program, there's infant, toddlers, and pre-K. There are also bilingual classes, and during the pandemic, there was an outdoor classroom created because a lot of the families that we're serving live in apartment buildings, and we also understand that children need to have that component to go outside and connect with nature. So we are also, three of our locations are co-located with a federal qualified health center, which is Mary Center, which facilitates the process from like our families connecting to like getting an education, but also connecting to the community with other services that they might need. My journey with Bria started because I needed to get my high school diploma. Prior to coming to Bria, I was doing different jobs that at that time I was 24 and I didn't really have a lot of bills because, I was 24. And I had a daughter, so my daughter was in school and my husband and I noticed that our daughter had something different with her speech. And she's my first daughter, so we didn't know much about it. We brought our concerns to the school, but unfortunately, her school at that time did not have that school was not properly funded at that time because there was a long wait list for the children who needed to be evaluated for different services. And the whole year passed by and my daughter never got evaluated. So when I got into Bria and I started going to my high school diploma classes, my NUP classes, my daughter also joined as a student. So within a few weeks, my daughter received her IEP for speech. So that year was just an amazing growth for her, and then also for mom. Mom was going to classes. Mom called her boss and said, "Hey, give me an opportunity to miss a few days, then you go to class, and then I can make it up with longer shifts other days." And I mean, in theory, he was amazing, allowing me to do this, but I also understood that I was missing out on my daughter's years, like earlier years. I was going to work before she woke up, or I was coming home when she was already asleep. And that's the reality for a lot of us parents who are working and trying to get our high school diplomas or get some type of higher education after our high school diploma. And then I'll just transition about what the support we received at Bria. Aside from my daughter getting her IEP and getting the therapy that she needed, it also allowed me to open my eyes of the possibilities that are in our community and how we can really bring that to the table. We are adults. We are required to work. We're required to make sure that everything is paid for because we're adults. Our children don't understand that mom does not have a high school diploma. Our children don't understand that bills have to get paid and still play with our children. So I think spaces like Bria and Academy of Hope and other charter schools have that flexibility and different modalities and scheduling for us to get where we need to get. And that's an amazing feeling to have.
Thank you for sharing that. And you finished your high school diploma in 2022 through the National External Diploma Program. Then what happened? And what have you been doing since?
So while I was a student at Bria, Bria was starting an advocacy in community engagement class, but it didn't have a name yet. It was just students were getting together and there was a facilitator. So I was part of that cohort of students that gave that class a name. So it became Bria Voices for All. I did not know that shy mom who didn't know what was happening in the city, who did not know that the mayor was, for the city and we could go to her office and advocate for different needs, is now leading that and facilitating that group. It's really been an amazing journey because I've not just gained those skills while in school. My daughter has also signed up to testify. She's 9 now, but she's testified for her school to get funding. And that's an amazing feeling to see my daughter following steps that I didn't get to that until my late 20s. So it's a great feeling.
And that's the power of that two-generation model in effect, right? It's seeing kids excel, it's seeing families excel all together. So thank you for sharing that. And so you talked about your advocacy and student leadership role at Bria. What's the other hat that you wear in your job there?
I'm student services supervisor, so we offer wraparound services. We have 4 different campuses, and every single campus has a student services coordinator, which is social services. And so our job is to make sure that because we understand that you're an adult and you have other responsibilities other than just coming to school, that you are connected to resources. access in the city, whether it's to navigate public assistance programs or housing, or if you just need to sign up your child for a soccer club that you just don't know where to start. So that is another part.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to share anything about how Mia's doing now? Your choice. This is I didn't give her this question in advance. Do you want to say anything about it?
So my daughter was in speech for 4 years, but last year she received a certificate, a recognition for being a great facilitator. That is something
Like mother, like daughter. And so I want to dig a little bit more into the student advocacy work that you do at Berea, and I know this is true at a lot of the other adult public charter schools in DC. To be an adult learner is also to be a proponent for your school and to share the amazing work that your school is doing for you. So, Gabby, could you talk a little bit about, or maybe just give us an example of one of the advocacy campaigns or advocacy wins that you've done with Berea Voices for All?
So there's been, happy to report there's been many wins in our advocacy campaigns, but one of the biggest one that we've had was during the pandemic. A lot of our community members did not qualify for unemployment because they were considered excluded workers, meaning dog walkers, babysitters, street vendors, so anybody who's not receiving a W-2 form couldn't formally request unemployment, or it was very tricky to try to navigate that. So Berea, along with other community partners, we advocated to our local government for $40+ million for these families who did not qualify for unemployment, and they started receiving the checks, and different community partners facilitated the process for the families to receive those checks.
That's amazing, and I love that example because this advocacy work is taking what they learn in their classes and putting it into practice in such a meaningful way, because we don't just learn English or academic skills to exist in a vacuum. We learn them to change the world, to improve our community, and that's exactly what Berea Voices for All is doing, but it's exactly what learners at all of these schools are doing. So it is so powerful. Let's zoom out a little bit and get back to that sort of systems level, because I know these are many of the conversations that you all will benefit from. And so I'm going to come back to Leicester, and I want to hear from you what sort of prompted Academy of Hope to go from a more community-based program to this public charter school model, and what was that process like for you?
It was a very painful process. I remember it very well. Resources. If you're in a community-based organization and you are operating on zero-based budgeting, you don't know what next year is going to look like. And I came out of Fairfax County Public Schools, local school system. I've worked in big systems, I've worked in smaller systems, and knowing one of the things that I found myself when I first got to Academy of Hope as a community-based organization was making tough decisions. How does an educator make a decision between getting a classroom set of books or hiring a teacher? That's not a real choice. And if you really call yourself an educator, you should be making those choices. So I was really, when I left, I was in another community-based organization, got to Academy of Hope, I just thought, we can't do this. This is just not possible. And knowing that there was an option for an adult charter school. So really, I really looked at it from a resource perspective. We applied one year. I remember sitting in a hotel room locally, just writing and pulling in staff to help me, because it was a cultural shift to do this. Right? There wasn't a lot. We had some board tension with that, but it was all about resources. We didn't get it the first year, not because we didn't have a good program. I have the application still sitting on my desk, but there were some other things happening citywide that only one set of schools received it. But we came back. There were a lot of external events. There was the joint letter. We did a new strategic plan. I never gave up on that, on us going charter, because I knew that we needed those resources. The joint letter, education and human resources, talking about career pathways, Just some really important research coming out about adult skills and what's needed to help people move further, faster. Are you in the room? That was one of my favorite articles, and looking at career pathways. And then there was the GED. The GED was doing a major overhaul in 2014. So this was all happening around 2012. And we did the math on how do we scale, how do we hire professional teachers, what does that cost, and we did some mapping of that and looked at our fundraising ability. We could never break beyond 2.5 million, that's very specific, I remember those numbers, because it was a huge win for us. But we knew that we needed to add another $1 million to our budget to really get people, get the trained people that we needed. And we didn't have a pathway there. And I convinced my board that we did it. So it was a resource decision for us. Resources and how do we increase our impact? How do we offer quality programs? We were half-stepping on a number of places that we all know need to be in place. And that was the driver. And applied in 2013, another painful experience. but that is why we did it. And you've got, I think that slide is up. So just to give you sort of a before and after, including impact. Like really, we couldn't break past like 20 graduates a year as a CBO. And we would celebrate that, and it was good, and I remember pushing for 30, but what do we need to do to double down and really support learners as they were trying to get out? So if you can see, in 2013, when we applied, we were 18 full and part-time staff, and that's questionable because we used a lot of AmeriCorps, and sometimes they were there. We had a volunteer, 40 to 45 volunteers, and they made up our teaching corps. It was volunteers, and we had a robust training program, but they were the teachers. Revenue, 1.2, I thought it was higher, but maybe in 2013 it wasn't more than that. And then enrollment. So just to see contrast, fast forward where we are now, 125 full and part-time employees, 40, we still have, I think we have more volunteers, I need to check in with that. But we expanded services, academic support, we've got a really nice bridge program, we've got student support. Teachers were handling that. The wraparound support services, teachers were trying to connect folks to those services from a classroom level. So we have an entire team dedicated to supporting learners and giving the wraparound services. Career academies, we had heard from our learners through surveys and town halls, we really need workforce programming. And we were able to do that in 2017 through some of the adult and family literacy, Title II funding, but leveraging at that time, instead of 2017, the local charter dollars. It has been, resources matter. And I really do say that in adult ed, sometimes you get this pushback. Is it about money or is it about, it's both, but you really need the resources because adult ed is so underfunded that resources are first to be able to do that. We work miracles on shoestring budgets. And paying teachers competitive salaries was something that I was really committed to. You can't do that on a philanthropic budget if you, there may be other places, but we know that adult ed is in the first place donors, right? They're going to go to K-12, arts, and all of the other things. We've done a lot of work in looking at the fundraising. So that's what it meant for us, and quality facilities for our learners. I really believe in a therapeutic milieu. When you walk into a space, you need to feel that it's a place of learning, it's welcoming, the environment. You shouldn't be dealing with a sleepy roof, although we have had that too. But really creating quality environments for learners to learn and play. That's what we did.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll just add sort of to build on what Ms. Esther is saying is that because adult education is part of the public school system in DC, it is a grade band within public ed. Any investments in the public education system also mean investments in public education. Every time the base funding goes up for a public learner, for our public school students, that includes adult learners as well. So when paired with the other grades, they reap the benefits, and I think that those benefits are complementary and supportive. So Dr. Walker-Davis, I'm going to turn to you now, and let's talk about that investment. Let's talk about the resources and why is it worthwhile? and what difference does it make from other adult education approaches?
Well, first I'll start by saying you heard Lucesta and you heard Gabby about the accomplishments of each of their respective environments, and that alone should tell you that it's a worthwhile investment, but I will make a few other points. First, even though within DC we talk about ways that we could seek additional funding, we are well resourced in DC. Public education is the highest investment in our city between public education and health, and yes, there are some schools and many times that we certainly ask for more, but we are well funded in the District of Columbia. Specifically though, when I think about why adult education is a worthwhile investment, the facts are when adults have credentials, when they gain skills, when they have more stable employment, the return on investment is real. It's immediate, it is life-changing. Gabby talked about the examples of what that means for not just the adult, but everyone in that household, in particular the young people in the household. They are showing up to school differently if parents are not worried about what work they can get or having to be out of the home for 2, 3, 4 jobs. If parents can get stable employment, that makes a world of difference in terms of their availability to support their child in navigating the K-12 environment. Speaking of K-12, while we have made significant improvements at the K-12 level, we still know that there are individuals who are falling through the cracks. And I look at our adult serving schools as an important part of the safety net for those who might not have successfully navigated the K-12 system. Public education in DC does not stop at high school graduation, right? We have 10 different environments where adults can find opportunity and meaning. I'll talk about the flexibility in the programming at each of our schools. Flexibility in schedules, integrated supports, the connection to career pathways. In my mind, when I think about the workforce infrastructure in DC, I cannot think about that divorce our adult serving schools. In fact, I think our adult serving schools are carrying the lion's share of the workforce efforts in the District of Columbia. And when you think about, we're not just throwing money at a problem in the District of Columbia, this is in fact an investment, because on the other end of the autonomy that our public charter schools have is accountability. So our schools they have clear goals that they are expected to meet. We report out on the performance of every one of our charter schools every 5 years. Those schools come up for evaluation, and we get to determine as the authorizer whether they continue or not. I will note that we are at 30 years of charter schools in the District of Columbia, and the first school to be up for their 30-year review is actually an adult school in the District of Columbia, the next step public charter school. And if I think about, and Lucesta spoke to this before, yes, nonprofits are able to do adult serving programming, and I don't think of it as an either or, but Lucesta articulated what more she was able to do having this structure in place, and philanthropy cannot solve this problem alone, at least not in our jurisdiction. And so the last thing that I would say about that is just the ability to be adaptive. So this is a public school, it is publicly funded, and because it is a charter model, there's a lot of flexibility that the operators of our public charter schools have to be responsive to the problems that they identify, to be responsive to community need, to be innovative, to try different things. And when I think about that is what makes this a worthwhile investment. Because at the end of the day, this is about equity. We cannot provide the same offering for everyone in the community, but these models allow us to provide equitable outcomes for individuals in our community. And I'm excited that we get to say this is part of our education ecosystem. I think we do it really well in DC.
Perhaps you are wondering, if you're not familiar and haven't looked through DC's budget books, how much money are we talking about? So currently in FY26, DC funds adult education at a little over $15,000 per student. plus an additional little over $3,000 facilities allotment. So this is over $18,000 a year that we're putting into each individual learner in our adult education system. And those dollars make a big difference. It means that we have high quality educators who have master's degrees and beyond who are receiving salaries on par with their K through 12 peers because they are educators and that's what they deserve. So what enables that kind of system to function? Leicester, I'm going to come back to you, and I want to know what has this charter status made possible for Academy of Hope, both as an institution, but also for the learners that you serve?
Yeah, so I'll go back to, it has transformed the organization in ways, I mean, there are pain points in any, system, but if I reflect on where we were when I got to Academy of Hope in 2006, it was a humbling experience to try and figure out how you piece these things together to have the outcomes. I think we did a great job with the volunteer corps. And I will say there was some tension with our volunteers when we were making this transition, when we spoke about hiring trained teachers, because we had built in some nice infrastructure to help support volunteers who were stepping in and teaching those courses. But transformative is that having resources to pay competitive salary, to offer a retirement benefit. So just thinking about the people who step in front of learners every single day, being able to treat them with dignity and respect, and understanding what they're bringing to the space. The added services, like we're continuing to add and refine our model. Data. We were able to build a comprehensive data system. We're still tweaking that. And that was through some of the local dollars and the accountability requirements. I would say that transition, we hit a really tough spot our second year and as a charter. We came out of the community-based space where, as you know, with funders, you renegotiate, we didn't quite get this. There was a cultural shift in our organization that I don't think we paid full attention to, which is you're in a high-stakes environment, you meet these standards or you don't exist, right? And that was a reality, which means that I had to do some really tough, some restructuring. Some people who started with us are no longer with us. It was painful. But at the end of the day, we have greater graduates, a number of outcomes on average in our academic program. We're anywhere between 40 and 50. I know that sounds small, but we are starting with individuals coming in at beginning literacy. But when you add in our workforce programs, we're over 100 graduates a year. And we're not having to sort of think about, we're able to leverage dollars in a way that with Rio and Title II funds, it sort of boxes you into a space and how you need to serve learners, what learners you need to serve, that leveraging those local dollars, you're able to build real progressions from people who are starting at the very beginning levels, no exposure, and use those dollars and blend them with Title II funds. So it's just given us a lot more flexibility, the ability to go deeper. We still fundraise, and we use those for new programs and to enhance some of the work that we're doing. So it's just given us a lot more flexibility and sophistication, but outcome, impact is much better. When we look at where we were prior to charter and where we are in terms of performance, we are miles away from that, and have spent a lot of time doing where are we, where else do we need to double down?
Thanks for sharing those. I'll also build on that to say that I know the adult public charter schools have really high staff retention rates and really high staff satisfaction. DC has a citywide survey that they just started doing 2 years ago, but the staff of adult public charter schools are significantly more satisfied with their jobs and happy to be there. As you all know from working in adult education, I say it's one of the most joyful places to be in adult ed. Dr. Walker Davis, you brought up earlier accountability, so I want to turn to that. And how are adult charter schools evaluated? What outcomes matter? And what does strong policy design look like from the authorizer's perspective?
Thank you, and I believe we have a slide that shows a little bit of this. So A charter school is a contract between the school's board and the public charter school board in this instance, and it outlines what expectations the school is expected to meet. We've had a long history of accountability in the District of Columbia. We've done some phenomenal work around educational accountability for charter schools, and adult-serving charter schools are part of that accountability mix as well. Every school has its own set of goals, and every school, whether they adopt our accountability system as their goals or not, is also measured by our accountability system. You'll see on the slide here that this covers the entire spectrum of schools that are operated in the District of Columbia. We have early childhood schools, we have schools between pre-K 12, between pre-K and 12, and we have adult schools. And those schools are not obviously measured by the same criteria as our K-12 system, but every school is measured against progress, achievement, school environment, and just in this iteration of our accountability framework, we do have for each school a set of specific goals that allows them to measure, evaluate, hold themselves accountable to things that make them unique in our sector. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that work that we're doing. I want to say that it really starts with being clear on what it is that you are trying to do, and so clear that you are willing to measure yourself by that, hold yourself accountable, and unfortunately, if you don't meet those goals, have the expectation of no longer being in service. We do evaluations every 5 years, and if a school does not meet its goals at that 5-year mark, our board can choose not to continue that school. And at the 15-year mark, that is when we do renewals of contracts. And at the 15-year mark, if the school does not meet its goals, we do not have any discretion. We must close that school. I'm pleased to say that our adult-serving schools continue to be high-performing on our accountability system and with their goals. And I'll name the outcomes that we think specific to the adult-serving schools matter most. Earning that high school diploma or some industry-recognized credential. So every one of our schools has one or both of those pathways in their programming. We think about job placement and wage progression. So this is not just do you get in the job, but is this a job that is a living wage, and are you progressing in that particular field? We think about transition to post-secondary education or training. We also look at persistence and measuring academic progress. So not just did you get the GED or whatever that credential might be, but how are you progressing? Because we know folks are not walking in the door necessarily ready to take that exam, but is the public charter school offering the pathways to get them ready, and how are they measuring themselves against that? With respect to policy, it really is being thoughtful about what is the problem that our schools are trying to solve, and in the case of adult education, it is preparing folks for navigating the workforce, and we think about how is the policy specific to the school, mostly identified through their charter goals. And in our environment, our public charter schools, our adult public charter schools are it is great to work with adult public charter schools, and I see some of my friends in the audience as well, because they come prepared, okay? They keep us on our toes. They come together as a group. While each one is different and unique, I will say that their ability to sort of rally together and identify problems that are consistent across adult-serving schools, to advocate for particular challenges in the community, and also to help us co-design our accountability system, what they want to be held accountable to. And that they don't come asking for it to be easy, right? Fair, absolutely, but not easy. And so it's been a pleasure to work with our adult-serving schools. And to Leicester's point, it is a shift. If you're choosing this path, it is a shift, right? Because you are making a commitment to your authorizer in our instance, you're making a commitment to your municipality or state, however you are funded, that's saying you are going to take public dollars to deliver on a set of outcomes, and there is a risk associated with that. And thankfully, our leaders are continuing to meet the challenge.
Thank you for that. And Professor Gabby, is there anything you want to say about accountability from the school perspective? What it feels like for staff or for students to be held to these standards?
Sure, I can. Yes, it's not radically different from the NRS. So if you are taking Title II funds, they align. It's not perfectly aligned in how we define things, and it's been great to work with Dr. Walker Davis and her team to really help them sort of see what's happening on the adult ed side and how we can align those. Because if you are taking both pockets of money, you want as much alignment as possible, because you're running anybody who's done grants with all of these different data systems, just keeping up with the definitions of what's what. But that has been, that's something that's been really great about working locally with the authorizer. I will say that given, as Ashley mentioned, sort of the precariousness of the national funding, that it is something that we should, and I know we're going to dig a little deeper into this, but if you're in a place to look at what's your charter legislation look like, is this a path forward for me? It would be worth exploring. What we've learned over time is that when you talk to people about adult charters, most folks are like, what is that? How does that happen? But there was a moment of, oh, this is great, because most people know that there's a need and that it's underfunded, but they've just never thought about the charter as a vehicle for supporting adult ed. So that's something I think we'll dig a little bit more and probably getting ahead of us. But it has been a great opportunity to do well by adults in the District of Columbia. And we're hopeful about looking other places to do that as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'll also add, from my perspective, I think the PCSB, the DC Public Charter School Board, is a great partner for adult schools in the development of the Aspire system, which is the school accountability framework for charters. They really partnered with adult schools, and they said, how can we make this a system that works for you and your schools and your students? And I see that play out in schools because when learners show up, they have really high expectations set for them. And we as adult educators know that our learners can meet those targets. And so it's a mutually reinforcing system. So let's bring it to the kind of topic that Leicester was getting to about replication and scalability. There's this great model in DC for how adult public charter schools are working and thriving. I believe it's a national model that can be replicated other places, but let's dive into that. What does that look like? So I'll open it up. Any of my panelists can respond to these questions. I want to know first, what is the first step someone should take if they want to explore adult charter schools in their state?
I would start by talking to your state authorizer or authorizers or State Department of Education to even know if you have enabling legislation to do this. So that's the first place.
Sure. And if there is, dig, read through it, and just to see what the limitations are. You'd be surprised, right? I remember talking to someone who's in Philadelphia last year, and she said, I looked at our charter legislation. She's in Philadelphia, and she said, it doesn't say we can't. And so if it doesn't, if it doesn't say you can't, push. And see, because I think people do know that there is a skills crisis. People know that we need, if we're looking at pipelines and economic development, that you're making the case for national competitiveness or local competitiveness. You have to ensure that even folks with the lowest level of literacy who are of working age, or even if we're thinking about, a custodial grandparent, their literacy matters. We know that a parent's literacy has the greatest impact on a child's outcome, and there's lots of research that supports that. So even if you're thinking about an older person building literacy skills, and you can make the case there that this is a K-12 solution, it's an upstream solution to the issue. So I think it feels daunting, but it might be easier than we think. Now, getting people to change the legislation, but if you push it, that's where I say go forth and do a push for it. Organize.
I was just gonna say that, if there isn't a pathway, you can always get in contact with every other, adult serving program in your state and get together, draft a letter, go to your, representatives and start talking to them as a need point of view, like this needs to exist. So it's not, you're not alone, there's so many people who want the same thing that you do. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just join with whoever already has something going for that, and then it just build momentum from there.
I'll double click on what Gary said, which is engaging your partners early. I think there's one end of like the advocacy naming what you want, but it is also engage your partners so that the first conversation about this is not threat or risk, right? Like they understand what it is that you're trying to do and you're not taking away from efforts that might exist in the community. And also just look at places where this is already happening. We in DC would be, from the authorizer's perspective, we would be happy to talk to you. I would actually encourage you to talk to the leaders of our adult public charter schools who've navigated this journey and can tell you what that looks like as well.
Thank you for that. Heads up, I'm going to be asking for Q&A in a few minutes, so get yourselves ready. But before we do, I want to come back to you, Gabby. You have so much experience as an adult learner, as now leading adult learners who are advocates. What role could adult learners play in making some of these policy level changes? Or if other states want to use their adult learners, how could they do that to make sure that they're part of creating the systems that are designed for them?
Just talk to them, let them know, I'm serious, like just let them know that it is most likely that they will not reap the benefit of their advocacy, that they are opening pathways for the future, a generation that is coming. That if their son or daughter at one point does not see college as an option because there's no money, because school sometimes is not for all of us right after high school. Your child can benefit from what your advocacy efforts will do. So you can also start having your adult learners understand how the city works, how the state works, where the money comes from, where it's going, who can be an ally. That's the information that you need to start as a base in order for them to start following any type of movement.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll just co-sign what Dr. Walker Davis was saying. The adult public charter school community in DC understands how uniquely positioned we are and how these policy and financial infrastructure has really been to the benefit of our learners, and we want more adult learners across the U.S. to experience that, and are happy to be resources for anyone who's looking to do this work in their state. So thinking about that, it's now time for Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. What additional information would you like to know? What questions do you have for our panelists? We only have one microphone, so if you have a question, if you wouldn't mind coming to the front, that will keep me from running up and down the aisles. And we'll start here. So if feel free to come and line up, and we can just pass the mic.
Hi, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and the organization that I work with actually just got a grant to open an adult charter school. My job right here, right now, is to find out what's next. Like, how do you do your scheduling? How do you recruit your students? How do you recruit your teachers? Because we are dealing with adults, and I don't know if you all have like a regular school day, like a K-12 does, or do you have morning classes and evening classes? And, how does all the logistics behind creating this school? That's what I'm here for.
That's a great question. Who would like to respond? We can probably get multiple responses here.
Okay, yes. All of the above. Yeah, I think when we we had a foundation to build from. So when we moved into the charter space, we were already running an adult ed program. So we had schedules, we had a master schedule, we operate like a typical school. We are 9 to 2:30 generally. We offer and this is since COVID, we were looking at ways to make it easier for adult learners to get to us. So COVID forced a hand, right? We had 2 pilots running, and what we developed was, a distance learning model, a hybrid model. So learners can opt to show up fully in person, or they can do it online, or we can do sort of this blended model with them. We like for them to make a choice, but we're generally 9 to 2. There's auxiliary programs that are happening later in the afternoon. The majority of folks sort of leave at noon, and then we have a program from 6 to 9 in the evening. And that is 5 days a week. So that's what we've built. So if you're just coming into the space, you're starting from scratch. We had curriculum already in place. We had to change that a bit, tweak it. And if you're coming into Texas, it is the adult high school model. So it is very different. You are aligning to all of, and I've been watching Texas for a while, you're aligning to the state high school diploma pieces. I have opinions about that I'll keep to myself. But I do think it is, we are doing something we have a separate organization that is opening in Baltimore, a foundation that will be starting a school, and it is a build from the ground up, a curriculum build that is aligned to the high school standards. Again, I have lots of opinions about that, but I'll keep them to myself. So you've got a different route. So if you've been in a high school, in the GED or the NDP space, a lot of that carries over. Now, your accountability, that was a miss for us. Like, how do you look at this accountability framework? There are ceilings, there are floors, a lot of technical work, and just getting familiar with the accountability system in your state. I don't know how Texas works exactly, but I'm sure there will be accountability measures. But you need to get quality teachers in place. We had a lot of K-12 people transfer from the K-12. You have to do training with K-12 teachers because there is not a full understanding of what they're stepping into with adults. They think sometimes it's just, pedagogy, I know how to teach. And, they're just big kids, and it's not that way. And talking about universal design for learning, all of those things about understanding the adult population. Contextualized learning is a big thing in adult ed. So you have to I would say it takes a K-12 teacher a good 2 to 3 years to really get familiar with the adult ed space. An EFL game, how is that different than a grade level game? Just the language of what it means to be an adult ed space. So there's a lot, I don't know what the planning time is. When we became a charter, we had a year of sort of planning to get upstarted. Okay.
You start August.
You start August. When did you get the grant?
About a month ago.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, see, this is what happened. So this is where I will be really bad. This is where it happens when K-12 people think you can just start an adult ed program like that. And your funding is probably not very good. Right.
I don't know the logistics as far as the funding. We do have our adult ed program, so we do GED, we do all those things, but this is a completely separate grant, and so those can't overlap with each other.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a completely separate building for the school.
Yeah.
Which we already have.
I understand that. Yeah. And I think that's when we're coming together. We didn't talk about, tell me if I'm talking. The adult charters, there's an adult charter leaders, everybody, it's Allison from Carlos Rosario. You've got to come together, and you do have to do a fair amount of educating. Yes. Even at the state level, who fund the adult ed stuff, to say this doesn't work. It's great, you're excited, they want to move forward with this. And a lot of what's happening is the adult high school model is moving forward. So again, not knowing a whole lot, I know that Texas opened 3 a couple of years ago and they're starting to do it. But
thank you.
So I think 2 other pieces that could be helpful for you and anyone else who is thinking about doing this in another context are thinking about how you're supported by other community partners, other partnerships, and this really hybrid learning as a unique opportunity. We all survived the pandemic, and I think what happened in the K through 12 space with virtual learning sort of left a lot of distaste for hybrid or virtual learning for many learners. However, and teachers, and it's a great opportunity in the adult education space, as many of you know, to meet adult learners with their busy lives and all the responsibilities they have. So Gabby's going to speak to partnerships in hybrid or virtual learning.
Virtual learning allowed me to graduate. I couldn't stop working in order to fully focus on school, and if it wasn't because we had different modalities, I wouldn't have graduated when I did. Community partners is a great thing. I want to just mention a little bit what you said, recruitment, laundromats, grocery stores, daycares, places where parents, people normally go that you know that would benefit from your programs. Yes, churches, absolutely, food pantries, that's where the people, yes, because, and then having different modalities, and then building your partnership with different community partners, that's like, go to a church and say, hi, I'm coming from this school, here's my information, if you have any community members from your church that are looking to get whatever programs you're offering, please send them my way. And then, you get a candy or something for being referred to, and then building that capacity with not just churches, food pantries, and all over, that anytime they think of any adult education, they automatically want to refer to your program because that partnership is there.
I'll also add that learners themselves are great at recruiting. They're able to share their personal stories with others in their community who might be able to benefit from the same program. So if you're already working with some learners, and it's a great opportunity for them to develop their leadership skills and to reach out to others who might benefit. Do we have any more questions? Okay.
There, I can pass.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Deborah Kenzie. I'm the former executive director of the National Coalition for Literacy, which means, as Leicester knows all too well, my middle name is advocacy. Dr. Walker Davis, you were talking about reporting outcomes and how important that is. You're absolutely right. And you were mentioning things that we can count. How many job placements, how many grade levels, how many GED achievements, and so on. All very important, but I think there's something larger that is not really easily measured, that is really the most important thing that adult education does, particularly in the charter school space, and that is building community resilience. That's our communities become stronger when our adults are able to pursue their goals through education. So I just wanted to add that and say, I've lived in the district since 1987, which seems like just the other day to me, but it really isn't. And so I've been watching these charter schools grow over time. And Academy of Hope and Bria and Rosario, which is has a special place in my heart, and all the others. And it's really a privilege to be a resident of the District of Columbia with you all there doing this work. So thank you for everything you do.
Now everyone's coming to it.
I saw your hand first, and then I'm going to come back to you. And then
I'm Ed. I teach here in Indiana, Learning Network with Clinton County. You mentioned during the transition of shifting from volunteers to paid staff and some of the difficulties about that. So I wonder if you could elaborate, what did you end up doing with your volunteers? Because you foster a culture of folks who want to help you and participate in programs, and you want to provide meaningful things for folks to do. And did I hear you correct? Did you say AmeriCorps?
At one point, yes, we had AmeriCorps
So you had a partnership with AmeriCorps?
Yes.
Do you guys still partner with like AmeriCorps?
No, we're largely community volunteers right now.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, that was a big cultural shift for us. Volunteers are like, we've been here for years. Why are we? And I will say that we lost some volunteers within the first couple of years because they didn't see where they could add, and we realized that was a loss for the school community. And we do have volunteers, and we have a volunteer coordinator. We have had some beautiful co-teaching models in the evening, and a volunteer and a full-time teacher. We do some pull-out work. Volunteers help, teachers with learners who may need additional support. So they are doing meaningful work around tutoring. Every learner, it asks us for volunteer tutoring. We can't get enough tutors to give everybody a one-to-one, volunteer tutor. But they are doing small group instruction. But they're in the space. They are reading. We figured out that, we sort of pushed them to the side the first 2 years and realized that they were absolutely a valuable part of the community, but a valuable component of the instructional program, especially when we're able to do sort of specialized pull-out around instruction, particularly math is our top, numeracy is the top spot. So and we have a volunteer coordinator and we're recruiting, and we had an all-time high early on of 100+ volunteers that we're trying to grow to again.
So, thank you, Leicester, for sharing your information about Academy of Hope. One of the things I just wanted to add to what you had shared for us as your employees was a lot of data around adult basic education. And one of the articles that you shared was about how when you help the adults, then that spirals down and has great implication on their families and how they grow and prosper as a result. Could you shed some more light upon that? And then also the second question is, what was it in you to decide to create this space for these adult learners?
That's right, he's throwing hard balls. So it's well documented, research. I go back to, there are a number of, Urban Institute did this longitudinal study about parent skills, and parent skills being critical to poverty, even into young adulthood. If an adult has, or parent or caregiver skills matter, right? If they do not have a high school credential or they're experiencing low literacy, that child and that family will spend even young adulthood in poverty. But the opposite happens. If the parent gets a high school diploma or improves their educational skills, we see the long-term impact being a positive impact on kids. Harvard Center for Child Development has done a lot of research around caregiver skills and why we need to invest in caregiver skills. So it really is, and we don't talk about it as often. It's not adults or kids, it's an and conversation. And, if we're thinking about poverty, right, we do a lot of the poverty solutions focused around keeping children out of poverty. Well, if the parent's in poverty and they are living with the parent, the child is going to be in poverty, right? So building that family, but making that investment in the adult also is an investment in the child. So lots and lots of research around how critical those caregiver skills are for even the future of kids into long-term adulthood. And then what was the other part?
So what was it in you to decide to create this wonderful space?
Yeah. Well, I just built on a great foundation. Martin Hilfiger started it in 1985. I wanted to sustain it. I didn't see a path to sustainability with the philanthropy. And how do we build on a foundation and sustain the work that's there? And I will also say it's a very personal passion and mission of mine. Neither of my parents had the opportunity to complete their education, and we're strong supporters of education for their children. I mean, that's not a unique experience for a lot of people. And so a lot of the learners at Academy of Hope were my neighbors. And my mom, who got to the 11th grade, she did a lot with helping learners to read their mail. Not learners, neighbors. They would come over. I didn't know this until she died and the neighbors started sharing. Your mom would help me read my mail and we're really going to miss her. So it's sort of in my DNA. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to wrap up with one more question. Maybe we can do two. I don't want to keep it. Okay, good.
You had mentioned that you all adopted different instructional models for your students. You said like distance learning from like COVID and everything. Can you kind of talk about how that is? Is that like different classrooms? Some classes are offered online, some hybrid.
Who wants to take this one?
So BRIA offers different modalities depending on the level. So there's the AM cohort and there's a PM cohort, 9 to 11:30. AM 12:30 to 3 PM. There's also the parents that bring their children to the program that are Monday through Friday, AM or PM. And then there's also fully virtual. For the high school diploma, they give you an option to do it fully virtual, but you do have to have a check-in with your teacher, or in having that flexibility that if you want to bring a child to the program, but you just want to do it virtual, there's a room where you can, other parents are learning, just in headphones and a computer, doing their high school diploma work, while the children are being taken care of, and then they go home after.
And we're using Schoology as a platform, and Clever is a single site logon, because otherwise folks were going all over the place and losing passwords. So they log in one and they have a dashboard with everything in that dashboard. So that's the platform that we're using. And then classes are live and instructed using Zoom for learners. So it's a combination of things to get learners access to the classroom.
Good questions. Thank you. We are over time now, but I just want to wrap us up by saying thank you so much for coming and listening to us and your engagement. I'll leave you with 3 big takeaways. First, adult charter schools represent infrastructure for community change, not just programs. They require intentional legislation, policy design, and a strong authorizer. And third, they are replicable, but they don't happen by accident. They are built with and for the students they serve. So, thank you all for being here. We're happy to stick around for a few more minutes if you have additional questions, but enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
There are at least 3 other schools in the room. We've got Carlos, Rosario, Allison Colteros, and then we've got Community College.
Let me get your
presentation might be useful for the members of the NCI. I'd like to suggest just continuing to get in touch with you or them. Would it be getting in touch with you?
Can I give you my card? Yeah.
I know. I know, right?
No, I've always worked for I've always been a consultant for Bria, but now I work with a bunch of the others. Okay. Yeah. two gens within it.
Yes. Well, that's what I mean, it's like,
Yeah, it's in the more of a base.